Learning is no more one time. Learning is continuous.
And those were the early days when IT was not really the flavor of it.
That how bad I was.
Can you just take us through that journey, sir?
Internet, Google search, www, all these were in play.
I think it still stays that way.
The way out of this is build a career for yourself. That's the future.
How was your earliest of work career? How did it all start?
If you have the right attitude, you'll transform yourself.
What made you start a company of yours?
You're starting off with a very interesting question, Suresh.
When you see that and when you look back, say at 2024,
people used to ask me very pointed question, do you belong to Andhra Pradesh or belong to Telangana?
These were the aha moments for you in Cyient. Were there specific moments?
I've met a lot of people, but all the same, I did not make many friends.
Can you elucidate some of that?
Don't lose heart if the child is not doing well. There's a lot more ahead of you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Conversations on HYBIZ. It's not often that one meets a gentleman whom I had met almost 30 years ago in the journey of business, in the journey of life. BVR Mohan Reddy needs no introduction. Even though he has stepped back from his daily routine at Cyient, which he runs now, as the company is called, he takes active interest not just in the company but many more activities. To discover him as a person, let's go on a journey with him. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. Thank you much, Suresh. Thank you to HYBIZ for inviting me for this Conversations series that you have. I'm very delighted to talk to your audience on any questions that will be reflected through you.
Let's start from the start itself. Your early days, where you hail from, your family, your parents especially, your siblings, and the early days of your education. Can you just take us through that journey, sir?
You're starting off with a very interesting question, Suresh, because especially when the state of Andhra Pradesh went through a fairly serious turmoil of separation, people used to ask me very pointed question, do you belong to Andhra Pradesh or belong to Telangana? But strangely, I belong to both the places. And above all, I used to say I'm an Indian. But if you look at my roots, my ancestors came from a small village called Mokshagundam in the erstwhile district of Kurnool. Then it became Prakasham and something else and something else. But I was actually born in Mahbubnagar. My father was a police officer and his posting was Mahbubnagar when I was born. So I was born in Mahbubnagar. So being a son of a police officer, my father used to get transferred every 5 years to 6 years. And so every time that he got transferred, the whole family moved with him. So I moved with him. So my education is in many towns of coastal Andhra and as well as Telangana, including Hyderabad. I went to St. Patrick's School. So therefore, the good news is that I've met a lot of people. I have therefore understood many more things than many others. But all the same, I did not make many friends because you see, in the school days, it's short term it becomes. So that's where I grew from. My mother was a housemaker. Whereas 4 siblings together. And the big dream of 1960s for any parent used to be give education to the children. And there were 2 professions actually, which were considered to be the best in those good old days of 60s. One is a doctor, the other is an engineer.
I think it still stays that way?
No, not necessarily, yes. Okay. I think it's changed. I'm very delighted it's changed. And as a result of that, what happened is my mother decided the girl who was the eldest in the siblings would become a doctor and I would become an engineer to start with. So both of us became the same. So therefore, my future was determined by my mother rather than by anybody else. But she's been a big role model, big support for the family. Our father was a very busy man. These were good old days when, we did not have the central government police force. So he used to go on deputation to places like Assam, Kashmir, and so on and so forth. So mother got tremendous amount of influence. The amount of hard work they put together in order to ensure that the children got well educated. I have enormous amount of gratitude towards my mother. So mother had a big influence in life. Mother had influence she's a very pious lady, very God-fearing lady. That comes into me too. So that gets into your values, saying that, look, to you, values must be important.
Humble background to start with.
Thank you.
So let us get into after the education, after engineering, you would obviously look for a job. And those were the early days when IT was not really the flavor of it. I guess the starting days of it. But how was your earliest of work career? How did it all start?
So I did my bachelor's in engineering from Andhra University. I was a gold medalist. I did well. And I also have to share the story that in class 7, my mother actually had doubts whether I'll clear my math paper, that how bad I was. That's only a reflection of how much of attention that I was paying to. She told me stories and stories. One day I asked myself this question, why am I here? What am I for? And that started slowly bringing in this wisdom to me, saying that, look, there's a purpose of life. True. You got to do something better than what you do today. So the end result is from a student that was 7th class, questionable in terms of his passing capabilities, to the end of it, by engineering, he was a gold medalist. So one message I have for my young friends, the children who are watching and the parents who are watching this too, is that don't lose heart if the child is not doing well. There's a lot more ahead of you. When I could transform myself, I keep saying everyone else can also transform themselves. The key underlying factor is one thing called attitude. If you have the right attitude, you'll transform yourself. So I started with this engineering. Then I went to IIT Kanpur for my first master's. And then that's when I started experiencing computers. I'm a trained mechanical engineer. I did my BE in mechanical engineering. I did my master's in industrial engineering, it was called. But that I used the computers for writing my dissertation for my MTech thesis. To give you a flavor, there used to be about 1,500 students in the IIT Kanpur campus. There used to be a computer center, which used to be housed in 5,000 square feet of area in one floor, one computer, an IBM 7044. And what is the power of that computer is what you have on your smartphone today. What I have in front of me, that's the power of the computer. So over a period of last 50 years, there was an enormous amount of transformation on computers. We'll park that for a minute. So I looked at computers, that was more interesting to me. But my first job was more on the shop floor, producing diesel engines for a company called DCM, which was considered to be the star company in the 1970s. But then I went to University of Michigan thereafter, and then again experienced more of computers, my second master's. Good. This was more on industrial and operations engineering I did. So therefore I look back and reflect back on my career in the last 50 years of professional life. I thought I saw 3 inflection points in computer science. The first inflection point was the proliferation of microcomputers and microprocessor-based computers in India in the 1970s. I was looking all around. I was seriously looking at it. And then I said, the way out of this is build a career for yourself. That's the future. That's where, as a mechanic, from being mechanical engineer, I transformed myself to doing more of computer work. I used to run the EDP center of Micro Bosch. I used to sell computers for HCL. That's what I did. The second inflection point in my career I saw in 1990s. That's when you saw the government of India, of course, starting liberalization. More importantly, at that point of time is when internet came in. Internet, Google search, www, all these were in play. That's when I said, this is a huge opportunity. So what did I do? I transformed myself to be an entrepreneur. And trust me, I see the third one now. Now it means the last 3 to 5 years. What is this pivot that we are seeing is all about artificial intelligence.
True.
And what am I doing with this pivot that's there is helping others build companies. Evangelizing, saying that technology is going to be the mover and the shaker in the world as we move forward. I do not think at this point of time I've seen so much amount of acceleration in technology as what I'm seeing today. So therefore, I think I'm trying to help people. So this is how I use the 3 pivots of life in computer science, computer industry, to ensure that I did good for myself, I'm doing good for others.
So your starting point, when you rightly described as that when you looked at the early 90s, is when you started your company, Infotech Enterprises. And obviously a mechanical engineer turned computer savvy youngster. You obviously have a lot of passion for entrepreneurship. You did speak to me off record about it. But when you look at Infotech Enterprises in those early days, you would have thought twice before starting a company, isn't it? Or were you safe working for somebody else? What made you start a company of your own?
Good. Thank you, Suresh. Interesting question. We go back to that question I said when my mother started saying that you won't pass class 7. That is when this wisdom came into my mind. The question always used to bother me, saying, what are you here? What will you be known here after you disappear from this world? And I said, you have to do something concrete. And that concrete I choose was entrepreneurship. I knew was doing a lot of reading. Entrepreneurship will create employment for people. You don't need to, you're a very independent boss yourself. It will create wealth. It will create innovation. All these are ones which came to my mind quite early in life. But then, if you go back and look into history back again, in the 70s, 80s, for that till about 90s, what was entrepreneurship all about in this country? It's all about brick and mortar companies. Large companies were built primarily with large capital. So somebody like me, from middle class background, with 4 siblings, with an honest police officer father, where would we ever have that money with us? So therefore, it meant I slowly but steadily created a bit of capital for myself before I decided to become an entrepreneur. Now, I also became an entrepreneur at a point of time when the opportunities were large. Why did I pivot in that 1991-92? The second pivot I'm referring to is the government brought in liberalization. They eased up ease of doing business in this country. Every process was being re-looked at that point of time. They opened up the economy. So therefore, global economy was what our addressable market was. A combination of that was what triggered me to become an entrepreneur in 91-92.
As a pioneer, one of the first early IT companies in Hyderabad, and possibly the earliest, maybe Intergraph and all came around that time, was the point that you were taking a huge amount of risk. And I remember meeting you in the Maitrivanam office of yours way back in the early 90s and talking to you about an article in the Economic Times then. When you see that and when you look back, say, at 2024, the world has changed totally. Let's admit it. 91 liberalization started with the Narasimha Rao government. Slowly it moved in Manmohan Singh government, then the Modi government. Now you're seeing a renewed push where we're saying we've got to be a 3 trillion economy. I know
5 trillion economy.
5 trillion economy and third largest economy. Sorry, I stand corrected. The main thing that comes to my mind is beyond just IT as such, you have gone into a lot of other fields within the gamut of it. With what, 16,000 employees, 731 million revenues. Where do you think the world is leading to maybe 5 years from now? 10 years is too long a time to ask. 5 years from now, what's your crystal gazing looking like?
Crystal gazing says that, actually I don't use the word called IT any longer, because IT became very popular because it was the expansion of it being information technology. In the very early stages, technology was being used to gather information, analyze the information, help human beings to take decisions, and especially in the corporate world.
Correct.
If you look at the first information technology revolution, what are the applications that were done? A payroll, inventory, sales order processing. These were the type of applications. Whereas now you see it is not just information processing. They can take decisions on their own. I was at an event in the last few days somewhere abroad, and people are talking about Mohan Reddy will be now moved into, and he'll become agent. Mohan Reddy will have an agent who will negotiate everything for him and do everything for him. The example could be, I want to buy a pair of shoes. I just say, agent, I need a pair of shoes. So the agent understands what my shoe is, what were the colors that I bought in the recent past, and then finally knows which are the shops where they're available. It goes to the agents of the shops and negotiate with them, and then finally come back and present to you, here are the 3 options. Do you want to pick up any of these? And I just click a button saying that mouse and button, and then it does all the financial transactions thereafter. That is not going to be too far away from true. It is going to be right around us. What we are seeing is that there are these 4 things which are bringing an enormous amount of change to this world. One is computing, the second one is communication, the third was sensors, and the fourth one is algorithms. So if you look at computers at this point, Prime, they are becoming more powerful, they're becoming smaller, and they're becoming cheaper. The law says Gordon Moore, the Intel founder, first wrote the law. But from 2010, people have now started coming to say, Moore was wrong, it doesn't take 18 months anymore. It takes only 6 months, 6 months to double itself. That power there's no slowing down on that front. The second one is, if you look at communication at this point of time, the number of applications which could never think about, and look at the transformation too that happened. In my generation, in my life, First time I got an ability to go and apply for a phone, they still told me I'll take 7 years before I get a phone. But I'm sure in large gatherings of students, I asked them, please put up your hand if you don't have a phone with you. Not a single hand goes up in a population of 1,000 people. So we have got this communication, it become accessible, but more than accessible, it has also become very reliable. It's become faster, it's become user-friendly. Take the example of 5G. The 5G has a latency of 1 millisecond. What would have been in the past is now possible. We talk about telemedicine, teleconsulting. But teleconsulting is talking to a doctor. But now you actually can do telesurgery. A best surgeon 10,000 miles apart can be moving the stylus on a dual body there, which is a digital body. And then actually a knife is moving on the patient 10,000 miles away. If there's a blood oozing somewhere, then he can cauterize it momentarily. It doesn't even take more than a millisecond for him to see it, then go ahead and cauterize it. So the result is technology, communication technology. And then the third one, which fascinates me, is all about the sensors. God gave us these 5 senses. Ability to feel, ability to see, ability to smell, ability to hear, and taste. These 5 sensors, the computers can do equally good as human beings. It's, I would say almost equally good, because I'll tell you some examples. And these equally good part of it is also, if you look at, translate them to applications, the application time is shrinking. They're becoming more efficient. First attempt by artificial intelligence that was done through using sensors, of course, is vision, basically. You see, and then, and what was it? Recognition of people, vision. And recognition of, say, data. And that actually took them about 20 years before they got to the human efficiency of 100%. Like 100%, the computer will behave on vision. Whereas now take an example of comprehension. You give a half sentence and the computer fills up the rest.
True.
Okay? And that took us 18 months to do it. So therefore, and then what we're seeing is, in areas like vision, the computers are at 130% efficiency compared to the human being. A lesion on the lung, when you see when an X-ray is being seen by a doctor, cannot be recognized with the naked eye, but the computer recognizes 1 year ahead of the doctor. So even doctors have now started saying we need a co-pilot to go with it. So sensors are in a position to get sense information. That information or data is now oceans of data that's coming in. And on top of it, you now run algorithms, and you can then have meaningful results coming out of it for decision making, and the decision making thereafter can be delegated back to them. So the end result is a combination of computers, communication, sensors, and algorithms. What we're seeing at this point is that the technology will not slow down. As I said, I was abroad yesterday, and they were talking, one of the ministers, there's an AI minister in one of the countries, and he was telling us all about that there was a dacoity in a bank, and there were 7 people involved, completely masked, broke into the bank. And he said they took 11 minutes thereafter to catch them, not because of facial identity. They're only on body movements. So therefore, even body movements at this point of time are all in the computer databases. And you require computing power to do that. So therefore, as I see into the future, it will be technology play, but that does not mean, I want to caveat this with one thing, that does not mean everything else will disappear. Human beings will remain the same. You will be the same 5 feet 6 inches, 5 feet 10 inches, or 6 feet 2 inches tall people. Will probably be the same 60 pounds or 50 pounds or 200-pound people. And will require the same car. Car will require to carry their weight, will require trains, will require planes. So there is somehow a wrong notion in people that all these core engineerings will disappear. Like mechanical engineering, chemical engineering will all disappear and everything will become AI. No. The basic will still remain the same, but this will be driven by AI or the tools associated with it. So therefore, what I see in the future is an extremely high technology play. Automation will become a part and parcel of it. There'll be some jobs that will disappear because of automation, but we also think that jobs will get augmented because of technology. So you and I, Suresh, will become more efficient because of technology. 20%, 30% of the time, which means that, that's very good for the humanity at this point. But the jobs which are disappearing, where people have to think about what do they do, is to reskill themselves. So the whole area, as I look into the future, is more of learning on a continual basis. Learning is no more one time. Learning is continuous.
Which is my next question, actually, which I keyed in as I was waiting for you here, was the fact that recently even Chief Minister Revant Reddy came out with a statement saying he'll shut down many engineering colleges which don't keep up to the mark in producing students who are required by the industry. Because the industry often complains that there's a mismatch between the students who are coming out of engineering colleges and what the industry really needs. And industry spends a lot of money and time in retraining these students. Now that's a big problem in India because they're still stuck with the old syllabus. We have not innovated. They don't speak to the industry. But do you think a point has come now where we need to kind of ensure that our academia work with the industry and give them the kind of manpower or even women power, if you can call it, that the industry needs? And where do you think, I'm not again saying IT industry, but where do you think the industry as such would be in this entire game plan?
Industry feels there's an extremely high need for getting employable people. But the society, or who's watching what's happening, we think that there's a larger problem that's there. The industry today is taking people and then retraining them, skilling them, etc., making them employable, job ready, and so on. That to me is only a temporary solution to problem. The root cause lies somewhere else. The root cause lies, what is it, what does technology require? Our ability to learn. Learn all the time. Learn, unlearn, relearn, upskill yourself. That's what you should do. And the second one is that we need to have curious mind. You need to question why. Your ability to communicate, work in teams. That is when you start seeing more amount of prosperity. You talked about $5 trillion economy. We'll talk about $30 trillion economy by Viksit Bharat by 2047. But if that has to happen, the manpower has to be very well equipped to do that. That equipped manpower is going to be manpower which is knowledgeable. Just not skills. To me, I don't honestly make a distinction between knowledge and skills. Skills will automatically flow if you can always supplement a knowledgeable person with a skill at this point of time. So you asked me this question as industry intensely is working with the academy at this point of time. I have a number of initiatives personally I'm involved in. One big one is called Inventive. I brought together all the 23 IITs that are in India at this point of time, showcasing the R&D work that they're doing to the industry. And we got about 20 projects in the first round, 50 projects in the second round, which are now being converted, commercialized from pure idea stage. That could be the one. But I'll go back to the school system itself, where I'm saying that is where it has to start because the engineer who comes to me, I train him. Or I can always take a fresh engineer, train him. But that to me is a very temporary solution. What is permanent is a transformation of the education system. And the transformation of education system will lie with the teacher first.
That's true.
That one word that you missed, Suresh, teacher. And therefore my emphasis is, can we do the teacher's training first? If we can do the teacher's training and then couple with the reforms in terms of curriculum changes, the pedagogy that has to go by, building infrastructure associated with them, automatically the productivity of the nation will go up.
That's true. I remember my teacher who taught me English in model school, Osmania University, where I studied. I still remember her. She's no more now.
Correct.
God bless her, Farkunda Karimullah. But I think that's where the problem lies because all through the life, the executives, be it in the information technology or any other sector, are making presentations. They're selling an idea to somebody, be it to a banker, to their colleagues or anybody. But when you look back and look at your journey, there must be some moment where you felt, here's a gentleman, or here is a lady, or here is a company, which I look up to and say, oh wow, wish I could be like this. Were there those moments?
Well, certainly yes. Not a single individual, as my journey has been. I never had somebody called a role model. But I always looked at number of individuals who have done extraordinarily well. And if you look at an individual a little more closer, you'll find just not positives, you'll also find negatives.
Negatives.
But always ignore the negatives. I saw a boss of mine. We used to start work at 7:45 a.m. in Michael Bosch.
Okay.
And my office used to be in the ground floor. I used to have a window into the porch. If his car came and stopped in the porch, it is 7:42 because he would go to the fourth floor without using the elevator. He would go running up the stairs. I said, that's how a leader should be. Punctuality. That's the learning that
Germans have it in them.
Yes, this is an Indian guy,
Okay.
right? Indian manager. So therefore, if he can do it, why not me? And you become the role model. I don't go late for meetings. I like to be in time. It's wasting somebody else's time at that point of time, not wasting your own time at that juncture. So you learn a lot. Like, I certainly, I'm a great admirer of Mr. Narayan Murthy for what about a corporate governance that he brought, similar values and so on and so forth. But what has he transformed this? He proved to the world wealth can be created by being honest also.
That's true.
Because till that time, people said dishonesty is the only way of making wealth in this nation. Maybe there could be a few exceptions to the rule. So the result is there's no single individual. But I've learned a lot from other people, but made sure that they're implemented. But Suresh, pardon me for 1 minute. I want to step back on
No
education
problems.
back again. I think the key to me is education has to be reformed further. I think NEP 2020, which was implemented by government, is very good. But I think the execution is critical for us. Execution not going according to plan. The second one I also feel is that the education is an extremely complex topic because it's a concurrent subject between Government of India as well as central.
State.
So I think we need to bring a lot of reform. Within the state, if you look at it, there's a higher education commission, there's a principal secretary education, there is a vice chancellor, there's a principal, there's a departmental head. With all this, where will the change come? Everybody has their own ideas. So I would strongly recommend that we should think about reforms to our education to make sure that ease of doing business in education is much, much faster.
I mean, you sound more like an evangelist, actually, if you start speaking like a professor, because that's where students would be interested. Because as you rightly said, you touched the raw nerve when you said the NEP 2020 and the implementation, which has actually gone back in time. But more importantly, when you grew Infotech into Cyient, and we know the reasoning for naming that company as such, but how did you see this growth happen? Because now that you have stepped back, you can say, okay, the next gen takes over, or even the gen after that takes over. Professional managers come in. But when you looked at the growth process of Cyient, from just being a normal, pardon me for using the word again, IT company, into something more broad-based right now, did you envision that growth or that kind of stretch happening over a period of time?
Absolutely. Because that's all the human ingenuity is. You want to excel yourself. You want to do tomorrow to be better than today. So people call some people visionaries and so on and so forth. And my young granddaughter at one point in time asked me what is the definition of visionary. So I said, these are the people who see something which other people don't see. So then she was in that meeting. So she said, Tata, they introduce you as a visionary. What are you seeing ahead of you right now? But the bottom line is, you certainly can see what are the changes that are happening. We saw technology was coming. We saw for sure that verticalization will help. We saw opportunities in verticals other people did not see. A good example is aviation.
Aviation, I was just coming to
Is an opportunity that we saw. We saw opportunity in sustainability far ahead of us. And so therefore, we saw the opportunities, we executed them. Our vision, we have values, which is very important to us. Values are foundation to us. On values, we have a vision, we have a mission, we have goals and strategies. We set up our goals in such a way to ensure that we will fulfill those goals. We constantly scaled ourselves. And for scaling, there are a number of things that you need to do. Just one medicine cannot cure all.
That's
It's
true,
not, one size does not fit all. So we have done that to make sure that we've moved forward with our lives, scale them. But equally important is, I'll make one last point on that count, is I'm a very strong believer that institutions will live forever. They should live forever, whereas individuals do not. So why did I let go is that, look, I said I'm not eternal, but I need to see my institution grow. And I have to have a smile on my face when I am rested on a 6x4. And therefore, what did I build? I built succession. And the succession is taken over. They have different vision. So now the company has two companies. We have not only technology services, we have electronics manufacturing. And hopefully we have announced to the public markets, we'll have a third company, which is in semiconductor. Our ability to constantly rediscover ourselves, look at opportunities that are there, which will actually be synergizing what you're doing at this point of time, will add value to what it is what leadership is about to me.
In fact, when you speak about your company so passionately and so vividly, I'm also taken to the fact that your granddaughter's project in Mahbub Nagar, which she's come up with, how do you look at it? I mean, I think she carries the same passion which you spoke about earlier. I mean, did you guide her into it, or was it an idea that came from her?
No, it was not my idea. It was her parents' idea. I think they all had, certainly I think she wanted to do something of her own. So that, she probably also becomes a well-rounded human being. And they seem to have had a conversation in the family. And they thought about number of ideas. But she said she picked this one.
100 days.
100. It's called 100 by 100 by 100. 100 days, 100 girls, 100 days of skilling, and give them assured 100 jobs. 100 jobs. Amazing project. Everybody that, I'm sure she's going to go to college next year. And she'll go to a good college because, several people are keen to take her on to their universities.
Because that's more important, because I mean, I also at one point in time was heading the Apollo CSR, Apollo Hospital CSR for quite some time. But the point is, when you start making meaningful difference to the lives of people, be working in your company or working outside it, because there comes a point in time when you want to give back to the society, which has given so much to you. But when you look as an individual, and then you look back and say, these were the aha moments for you in Cyient. Were there specific moments?
Oh, yes. Several of them.
Can you elucidate some of that?
See, the first one, the big aha moment of my life was that Pratt & Whitney was in search of a partner in India. They had the 10 top companies in India in their list. They were going around the country doing a Bharat Darshan. I was one of those black sheep. They suddenly discovered me. But the moment they discovered me, they loved me. They told me all about what they liked in me. And I asked this question 1 year into the relationship to Ed Crow, this Executive Vice President of Engineering. Ed, tell me one thing, why did you choose me? And he said, Mohan, trust. You under-promise, over-deliver. So you never went back on that. The day we came to your office, the previous night they had dinner with me, very informal dinner. A group of another 20 people were there. He said, I very patiently, very curiously heard all your story. And next morning I come to the office, I saw what all you told me. That's when the seeding of the trust started. But in the last 1 year, anything that you told us you'll deliver, you delivered it. So therefore, that's an aha moment in our lives. That's a big one that has come by. And the fact of life is that the Pratt & Whitney, or the parent company called United Technology Corporation, Louis Chenevert, calls me 3 years after the relationship. He says, Mohan, I want to be an investor too in your company. So I told him, why investor? I'll have a problem, Louis, with the rest of the people that are going to come by. He said, no, Mohan, I think the key reason I want to be an investor is that I like this company so much. I should tell people that I also developed this company. And when they finally exited the company, when I was thanking him, exited not us in terms of investment, they're still our customer. So he was saying, Mohan, you keep thanking me profusely for what I did to you in terms of giving this large contracts year after year. It's a $100 million contract that we have with them per year now.
Okay.
So therefore, and he says, but I have to thank you twice over, because when I give this $100 million contract, I save $100 million for the company. The second one is, I also made 10x on the investment I gave you.
Okay, when you exited the company.
So therefore, that's big moment, UTC chairman telling me this, saying that, So therefore, the number of moments in our life that we saw, that it's all because of hard work of not mine, it's my team. The 16,000 people relentlessly work for customer satisfaction. We're paranoid about our customer satisfaction. We think, we measure the customer satisfaction thrice over every year. And that's the result. What's the end result? Is that their customers who are 25 years old still with us, growing.
Your passion for entrepreneurship is very clearly brought out in this conversation that we had. But the main fact is, there comes a point in time when you say, I want to be the kind of father figure for entrepreneurs. I want to spawn more of them. I want to see them grow. And India is seeing that in the last 5 years. the kind of unicorns that we have come up with, possibly no other country in the world has done this. Do you think that culture of entrepreneurship is finally taking root? It is not about taking up a job, but creating jobs. That has become the norm now, sir.
So I think what we are seeing at this point of time is enormous amount of need for entrepreneurship. Why am I so upbeat about entrepreneurship? The nation needs one. India today has this big advantage in terms of demographic dividend, which means that 50% plus people are in the age group of working age group in the nation. And the average age of this nation is about 27 or 29, around that number. So therefore, there's more amount of job creation that's required. Especially to give you a flavor, it's about 1 million jobs every month, or you require approximately 10 million jobs every year. And the demographic dividend, if you extend it for next 10 more years, you'll require 100 million or 10 crore jobs. And we have evidence at this point of time to say net new jobs that are created in the world, not in India. In the world. Right. 60% of net new jobs are created by small, startup, medium-sized companies, not the big guys. Big guys create only 40% of the jobs. So therefore, there is a need for those entrepreneurship to come by. So we are looking very hard in capacity building. So I, with my passion, I went and built a School of Innovation Entrepreneurship in IIT Hyderabad. It's called SCIENT, playing on the word called CYIENT. Cyient is one that's also pronounced as Cyient. And what did we do? We gave money from the Family Foundation and Cyient Foundation and built the school. And what is the basic objective there is capacity building for entrepreneurship. We're creating the ecosystem for people. We are today morning, just before I came here, I was reviewing what's the next month's plan for us. And what are we saying? Go to the rural Telangana to go to the tier 1, tier 2 engineering colleges to promote entrepreneurship. To me, and then, it's also very important that entrepreneurship, if you go and Google around, it says all about entrepreneurship is having an idea and making economic prosperity of the idea, taking some risks. But I keep saying it's a lot more than that. Entrepreneurs generate employment. Entrepreneurs generate wealth. In our company, we also shared the wealth that we created for ourselves. It's not just being done by one individual. Entrepreneurship promotes more amount of innovation. So there are so many things that happen with entrepreneurship. That's very critical for the future of this nation. I honestly feel that if this nation has to become a $30 trillion nation by 2047, honestly, becoming $5 trillion is not a big deal at all. In 2 years, if not 3 years, we'll become a $5 trillion economy. But to become a $30 trillion economy thereafter, by 2047, that's in about 22 years or so from now, I think it's not going to be very easy unless there are some structural changes that come by. There should be a big pivot that happens with people. And big pivot that I think about is entrepreneurship.
Actually, as Prime Minister Modi often keeps saying, be a job provider, not a job seeker.
Correct.
But I think also the fact that entrepreneurs in India also need to have a stomach for accepting failures, because I've seen that quite often as people, when they fail, and when you go to T-Hub or anywhere for that matter, out of 10, 9 will die. That's the law of the jungle.
Sure.
That's how it works. Absolutely. But I think, rightly put it, sir, I mean, is there any last word to the entrepreneurs that you have in terms of budding entrepreneurs who are still in college, who are thinking that they need to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or they need to be the next Elon Musk? Are there any words for them?
Yes. 3 things or 4 things I'll say. Number 1, please look for a real problem. Don't imagine a problem and start solving the problem and then say, I'll find a customer for it. That's not it. Then when you find a problem, find a unique solution associated with it. Unless you found a unique solution which will stand time, you will definitely not succeed. And third one is look for a large addressable market. The rest of it will fall in place. The team, the money, the ecosystem, they'll all fall in place. But these 3 things, that is a problem, a solution, and a marketplace, will not fall in place if you choose the wrong path. So those are 3 pieces of advice I have.
Wonderful conversation that we had today.
Thank you.
But I think as a parting shot, you were described as a visionary, and rightly so. But is there anything that BVR Mohan Reddy would like to be remembered as? When people say, wow, here is a man who was that.
No, I like to be remembered as a man who contributed to the society. He did something good for the society. I think that's what it is.
That's being very, very humble, sir. So humble of you.
I did something good. I'll strive till my last breath.
Thank you very much for the wonderful conversation that we have. Ladies and gentlemen, that was BVR Mohan Reddy. an entrepreneur, a pioneer, of course, a man who speaks his heart. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind.